You're tuned in to Beyond the Known. From the misty peaks of ancient China to the blood-stained legends of medieval Europe, one creature reigns supreme in the mythologies of nearly every culture: the dragon. But why? What if dragons weren't just fantasy, but a distorted memory of something real?
Hi there. Yeah, today we're taking a close look at a topic that pops up almost everywhere you look in history and mythology, the dragon.
It's truly one of those universal symbols, isn't it?
Absolutely. You see them in ancient texts and folklore and modern fantasy.
So where did this idea actually come from? And, why do cultures that apparently never met describe creatures with so many similar features?
That's the enduring mystery we're trying to tackle today.
Right. Our mission for this episode: to understand the surprising theories behind the dragon myth. We're exploring everything from, say, ancient bones buried deep in the earth,
To the depths of the human mind itself.
and maybe even, casting a glance towards the skies.
Exactly. We're going to analyze our research, pull out the key insights, and just see what light we can shed on this, truly global phenomenon.
We'll unpack potential real-world inspiration,
Explore the powerful symbolic meanings.
and even consider some truly out-there possibilities that really push the boundaries of conventional thinking.
Yeah, some wild stuff.
So get ready!
Yeah.
We're about to take a journey
What?
through history, paleontology, psychology.
And even cryptozoology,
Yeah.
all in pursuit of the elusive dragon.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with just the sheer scale of this thing.
Yeah.
Dragon myths, they're found, all across the globe.
Yeah.
In wildly different cultures, separated by huge distances, centuries even. It's actually remarkable how pervasive this creature is in human storytelling.
It's bizarrely consistent, though. You find them woven into the fabric of, foundational myths in places like Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, Mesoamerica, Australia, ancient India. I mean, practically everywhere you look, there's some version of a powerful reptilian creature.
Our research highlights some incredible examples that really drive this point home. In Norse myth, you have Jörmungandr, the world serpent.
It's a big one.
Yeah, so enormous. It encircles the entire earth. Then Slavic folklore gives us this Zmej,
Oh, yeah.
often shown as this multi-headed fiery monster. It guards bridges or mountains, demands tribute. Classic monster stuff.
And going further east, like ancient India.
Right, the Rig Veda talks about Vitra, a massive serpent, or maybe dragon, representing drought and chaos, famously slain by the god Indra to, release the waters.
Wow.
And ancient Iranian texts feature Ajidahaka, another monstrous three-headed serpent-like dragon, fought by a hero, Thraitona. These aren't just minor characters,
No, they sound central.
Totally central figures in these mythologies.
And you can trace similar figures back even further. Right?
Oh, yeah. Ancient Egypt had Apep, the colossal serpent of chaos, battled the sun god Ra's boat every single night in the underworld, representing the forces threatening cosmic order.
Constant battle.
Exactly. Then Mesopotamia, one of the cradles of civilization, gives us the Musho.
So what now?
Mushu.
Yeah.
It's depicted on the famous Ishtar Gate of Babylon. This creature is fascinating, described as having the body of a snake, the forelegs of a lion, and the hind legs of a bird of prey. Kind of a mix and match monster.
A chimera, almost.
Sort of, yeah. There's also the Usumgal, another giant serpentine monster, often used as a metaphor for powerful, destructive kings.
And the Greeks, they had loads, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Greek myths, which obviously heavily influence Western thought, feature terrifying figures like Typhon.
The monster with 100 snake heads.
That's the one. And the great serpent Python, slain by Apollo at Delphi. The multi-headed Lernaean Hydra that Heracles battled.
A classic.
And the dragon of Ares that Cadmus had to fight before he could found the city of Thebes. They're everywhere in Greek myth.
What's particularly striking, though, and our research points this out, is how cultures that were geographically isolated, some across vast oceans, seem to independently develop concepts for these powerful reptilian or serpent-like creatures. Even places like China and South America with, minimal to no documented ancient contact.
Absolutely. Chinese dragons, or long, they're legendary creatures deeply embedded in the culture. And they're quite distinct in their specific features from European dragons, which we'll get into.
Right.
And then in South America, you have figures like the feathered serpent deities,
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica, or Kukulkan in the Maya tradition.
Feathered serpents, okay.
They combine reptilian serpent features with avian bird feathers features, and they hold immense cosmic and creative power. Now, they're not identical to a fire-breathing European dragon.
No.
But when Western observers first encountered these descriptions, their reptilian form, immense size and power, led to them being broadly categorized under that dragon umbrella. It highlights that core conceptual overlap.
That Reddit research we looked at, it explicitly noted this bizarre global consistency across Chinese, European, South American folklore art.
Yeah, I remember that.
It acknowledged that while the specific features and the symbolic roles vary, sometimes drastically, the fundamental concept of a powerful, often reptilian or serpentine, large creature persists globally.
And it's this widespread presence that really poses the central question driving our episode today.
Exactly. How did cultures separated by vast distances, oceans, with no apparent contact way back when? How did they all come up with such similar fundamental ideas for a mythical creature?
Is it just some massive coincidence? Or is there some deeper shared root we're missing?
It feels like there has to be some fundamental human experience, maybe, or observation, something that led to this common concept, even if the specifics were then, filtered and shaped by local culture, environment, values, leading to all those variations we see.
That makes sense.
Okay, so they're everywhere on Earth, pretty much. But as you mentioned, they're not all the same, are they?
Yeah, not at all.
Our research definitely confirms that while the core concept exists globally, there are distinct, really fascinating differences between, say, Eastern and Western depictions and roles.
Absolutely. So the image most people probably think of first
is a standard one?
Yeah, the classic fire-breathing, scaled beast, big wings, 4 legs, maybe guarding treasure in a cave.
Right, the villain dragon.
That modern Western image, it largely developed in Europe during the Middle Ages. It seems to be this fascinating fusion, combining ideas from older classical serpent myths like the Greek dragon.
The giant snake idea.
Exactly, with elements maybe from Near Eastern legends, possibly even biblical interpretations filtering in.
And that medieval European dragon, it really became the archetype of the evil, destructive, treasure-hoarding beast we know from so many stories.
Oh yeah, like Smaug the Golden.
Lying on his hoard in the Lonely Mountain in The Hobbit. A personification of greed and ruin.
Or Fafnir, the cursed dwarf who transformed into a dragon guarding his gold in the Volsunga saga.
Right.
These Western dragons, they're typically shown as, malevolent forces. Embodiments of chaos, obstacles, maybe even sin.
Something for the hero to slay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They must be confronted and slain by a hero. It often represents the triumph of good over evil, or order over chaos. The legend of St. George and the Dragon is the absolute classic example, isn't it? The hero's task is to tame and then kill the terrifying beast.
But then you look east and it's totally different.
Completely different. In stark contrast, Chinese dragons, the Long, are depicted very differently and hold a profoundly different cultural significance.
How so?
Well, they're typically associated with good fortune. They're considered wise, powerful, benevolent celestial beings.
So not evil at all?
Generally not. While serpentines, they often lack those large, bat-like wings of Western dragons. Instead, they seem to swim through the air or clouds, using their inherent power.
Ah, okay.
And they're strongly linked to water and rainfall, which were obviously essential elements for the agricultural societies of ancient China. They are powerful symbols of cosmic forces' natural power.
And even the emperor. Right.
Exactly. The emperor of China during later imperial dynasties was symbolized by the dragon. It represented imperial power and authority.
Wow. And wasn't there a specific color association?
Yes, the azure dragon, King Long, is hugely significant in Chinese tradition. One of the 4 celestial guardians, representing the east and the element of wood.
And you still see this reverence today?
Absolutely. You see the reverence for long and important cultural traditions that continue today, like the vibrant dragon boat racing during the Duanu Festival. They represent power and prosperity, not evil.
It's such a contrast.
Isn't it? But even within what we broadly call the West, the concept evolved over time, as we touched on earlier.
Right. The Greek one wasn't always winged.
Exactly. The ancient Greek draken wasn't initially a winged-legged creature. It was primarily a giant, often terrifying serpent.
Like the one guarding the Golden Fleece?
Precisely. The one Jason and the Argonauts had to overcome. or the offspring of Typhon, the Lernaean hydra, which was definitely more serpent than winged beast. Early descriptions, like the serpent of Ares, fought by Cadmus, they really emphasize its serpentine nature. They sometimes gained wings or legs later in descriptions or art, as the myth traveled and merged with other influences.
And those medieval bestiaries you mentioned, the animal books.
Yeah, they provide a fascinating glimpse into this evolving image. Our research mentions these bestiaries from collections like the Met Museum.
What did they say?
Initially, some of these texts describe dragons primarily as giant serpents, no wings or legs, aligning with that older Greek idea. They noted the dragon's immense size, its scales, and emphasized its power residing in its tail, that it could crush animals like elephants by constriction, rather than relying on a bite or fiery breath in the earliest descriptions.
So the tail was the main weapon.
Seemed to be initially. The winged-legged form became more common in bestiaries and art over time, maybe reflecting growing influences or just evolving imagination.
So these different forms, different roles, they symbolize different things.
It seems so. Reflecting potentially varied cultural concerns or maybe even origins, Western dragons often embody chaos, evil, obstacles to overcome.
The challenge.
Right. Representing the disruptive force challenging the established order or the hero's journey towards maturity or success. They're a test.
While Eastern dragons symbolize power, good fortune, cosmic forces, the benevolent side of nature, maybe?
Yeah, albeit immense and sometimes unpredictable aspects of nature itself. They're often seen as allies or wise entities to be appeased and respected, rather than just enemies to be destroyed.
And there was that research from UQ, University of Queensland.
Yes, about monsters in general.
It said they often function as embodiments of human fear, things that disrupt social norms.
Exactly. They turn abstract threats or concepts like chaos, disease, natural disasters to tangible personified creatures of disorientation.
So a Western dragon might embody fear of unchecked power, the wild unknown.
Or the destructive force of fire, yeah. While an Eastern dragon, tied to water and sky, might represent the awesome, sometimes terrifying, but ultimately life-giving power of nature that has to be understood and respected.
Could these differing symbols hint at different core inspirations then, even if the basic form started somewhere similar?
It's possible. Is one rooted in primal fear of chaos and destructive power, while the other is linked more to respect for natural power and cosmic order?
It's a fascinating divergence from that global consistency of the basic reptilian form.
It really is. It suggests that even if there was a common seed, it grew very differently in different cultural soils.
So if they're not all the same, but they share these fundamental reptilian traits and immense power across the globe, could there be a real-world origin, something that was interpreted differently?
Well, that leads us to a really compelling and, I'd say, increasingly mainstream theory explored in our research. It points to ancient people finding fossils.
Ah, the fossil hunter idea.
Exactly. This is the powerful idea put forth by Adrienne Mayer in her groundbreaking book, The First Fossil Hunters.
What's the core argument?
She argues that the discovery of oversized, really extraordinary bones by ancient peoples all around the world could have directly inspired myths about giant, fearsome creatures, including dragons, griffins, giants, other monsters.
Makes sense when you think about it.
Totally. Imagine ancient people with no modern science stumbling upon enormous fossilized remains, creatures far larger and stranger than anything they encountered daily.
Like a massive skull with terrifying teeth.
Or a backbone stretching dozens of feet, enormous claws. It's not a huge leap to think they might interpret these as the remains of mythical giants or monsters, is it?
No, not at all. Does she give examples?
Compelling ones from our research. She suggests, for instance, that stories of dragons and serpentine monsters in northern India, often depicted as living in rivers or mountains, might relate to fossils frequently found in the Siwalik Hills region. These hills are incredibly rich in bones of large extinct crocodiles, giant tortoises, massive mammals like gomphodors, ancient relatives of elephants, but some had 4 tusks. Huge animals. Finding the massive scaled remains of a prehistoric crocodile, or just the sheer scale of gomphother bones, that could easily spark tales of immense, fearsome reptiles.
Okay, I can see that. What else?
She also connects that surprisingly detailed account by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus.
The father of history.
Right, his account of winged serpents living in the Egyptian desert. He claimed to have seen skeletons and heaps of bones from these creatures there.
Which sounds like fantasy, usually.
It was often dismissed that way. But Mayer points to the discovery of fossils of enormous sailback dinosaurs like Spinosaurus aegypticus in that exact region.
Spinosaurus, the huge one from Jurassic Park 3rd.
Well, a real one. A colossal predatory dinosaur with a giant sail on its back. A crocodile-like snout, reaching up to maybe 50 feet long. Finding remains of that kind of creature in the desert certainly fits Herodotus' description of a large, extraordinary reptile, possibly even interpreting the sail as wings.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty convincing. Any others?
Another powerful example she discusses is the alleged discovery of the skeleton of the very monster slain by Perseus to rescue Andromeda in the Greek myth.
They thought they found the actual monster.
According to Roman sources, yeah, including a biography of Apollonius of Tyana, written centuries later but taken as factual history for ages. A skeleton was apparently dug up at Joppa, modern Jaffa, in Israel, in ancient times, and displayed as the remains of the sea monster. It was described as having a 40-foot backbone.
40 feet.
Yeah, and this wasn't dismissed as fantasy then. It was seen as tangible proof of the myth. A clear misidentification of some enormous prehistoric marine reptile, like a mosasaur maybe, or a whale, but interpreted through the lens of the existing story.
So they found bones and went, that must be the monster from the story.
Pretty much. And think about China. Large prehistoric animal fossils are incredibly common there.
Right.
For centuries, these remains weren't just found. They were collected, traded, used in traditional medicine, where they were explicitly identified and referred to as dragon bones. Longa.
And they literally called them dragon bone.
Literally. The word for dinosaur fossils became synonymous with dragon remains. This cultural practice directly links finding ancient bones to the belief in dragons.
It's a direct connection right there.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, Mayer is careful. She doesn't say all dragon stories only come from fossils.
Okay.
She notes that exaggerated folk knowledge or descriptions of living, large, powerful reptiles could also form a basis for these myths, especially in regions where these animals are native.
Like komododragons.
Exactly. The largest living lizard capable of taking down big prey. Or alligators and crocodiles, huge and formidable reptiles found globally. Accounts of encounters with these animals, maybe embellished over generations, could easily contribute to the pool of dragon lore.
Our Reddit research brought that up too, didn't it?
It did. Users noted the visual resemblance many dragon depictions have to ancient reptiles, suggesting dragons are simply dinosaurs with wings and elemental powers in the popular imagination.
Right.
Another user connected the common depiction of Asian dragons, often described with features like a lion's head, snake body, bird claws, maybe fish scales or deer horns.
The composite creature again?
Yeah, connected that to a possible chimera-like combination of bones from different large creatures that ancient people might have found and sort of mentally pieced together, or imagined belonging to a single monstrous entity.
Finding a bit of this, a bit of that.
Exactly. And we also see mentions of other large extinct animals that weren't dinosaurs but were still terrifying megafauna. Titanoboa, for instance. An enormous snake from the Paleocene epoch after the non-avian dinosaurs died out, reaching lengths of over 40 feet.
40 feet? A snake?
Yep. The existence of such colossal, terrifying snakes in the relatively recent geological past that could certainly echo in myths about giant serpents or dragons.
Okay, that makes sense.
And speaking of megafauna, while our source on global megafauna extinctions doesn't directly draw a line to dragon myths.
Right.
It highlights a time when massive, powerful, potentially terrifying creatures existed alongside early humans in certain regions. And that brings us to another fascinating idea.
It is.
What if it wasn't just finding old bones, but remembering actual encounters with these creatures?
So picking up on that thread then,
Right.
What if it wasn't just finding old bones lying around?
Yeah.
What if early humans, maybe tens of thousands of years ago, or even our more direct ancestors in the, not so distant past, actually encountered terrifying megafauna that are now extinct? And these encounters were so profound, so fear-inducing, that they were somehow preserved through incredibly long-term oral traditions.
That's a really compelling possibility. It came up in our research, particularly in those Ask Historians Reddit discussions.
Oh, yeah.
A historian on the forum suggested that some of these deep-seated myths could have emerged not way back in the time of dinosaurs,
Millions of years ago.
but in the more recent past,
Yeah.
perhaps around 10,000 years ago during the late quaternary period.
Oh, okay. What was happening then?
Well, it was a time when many large predators and formidable megafauna were still around across the globe, and they were a constant existential threat to scattered early human populations.
Right. Things like saber-toothed cats, giant bears.
Exactly. And they point out that even today, large snakes like anacondas or pythons, big cats like jaguars, tigers, lions, and crocodiles, they're dangerous predators, capable of attacking and killing humans.
For sure.
And they would have been even more so thousands of years ago, when humans had fewer defenses, less sophisticated weapons, and predators might have been larger or more numerous in certain areas.
So constant danger.
Pretty much. One fascinating theory mentioned in the Reddit research expands on this. It suggests that the dragon myth, particularly its composite nature,
Mix and match aspect.
right, might be an amalgam of the predators that pose the greatest threat to our primate or early human ancestors, especially those living in environments like forests or savannas.
An amalgam of threats. How?
Well, think about the dangers from different angles. Snakes that could strike from above in trees or below from the ground.
Hmm?
Big cats that could ambush with terrifying speed and power. Large birds of prey that could potentially snatch small children from exposed areas.
Okay, multiple threats.
So, combining the most fearsome traits of these animals, the serpent's coils, fangs, silent approach, the cat's claws, teeth, strength, ambush ability, the bird's wings, talons, perspective from the sky,
You combine all that?
you could create a composite creature like a dragon. A creature embodying multiple primal fears rolled into one super predator.
That's actually a really interesting idea. It links back to the fossil theory, too, maybe.
How so?
Well, maybe finding bones of these ancient, terrifying mega-predators served to reinforce or give tangible form to those oral traditions of encountering them. Added details like immense size or strange features seen in the remains.
That's a definite possibility. The two ideas could work together. Finding the bones confirms the stories, or the stories explain the bones.
And the realm of cryptozoology often touches on this, right? The search for unknown animals.
It does. Our research mentions cryptids that sound strikingly like simplified dragons or ancient reptiles. The Kongamado, for instance.
Kongamado, where's that from?
A creature described as a pterosaur or flying lizard reported in the June dew swamps of Zambia and Zimbabwe.
A living pterosaur.
That's the description. Locals describe it as having leathery wings, a beak full of teeth, and it's said to attack people, sometimes even capsizing canoes. There are even alleged historical accounts, like one man supposedly hospitalized in 1956 after an encounter.
Wow. Real or not, the belief is there.
Exactly. And of course, there's the famous persistent search for Mokele Mbembe in the Congo Basin.
The supposed living dinosaur.
Sometimes described that way, yeah. A large, long-necked dinosaur-like creature. While often dismissed, these stories, even if based on misidentification, reflect a deep-seated local belief in the possibility of giant, ancient-looking reptiles still existing. It echoes that idea of surviving megafauna, or memories of them.
So the core idea here is that these myths aren't just pure invention, or based only on finding old bones.
Right. They could be heavily distorted, maybe fantastical, but persistent memories of real, terrifying encounters with animals that no longer exist or that exist only in very remote areas, passed down through countless generations around campfires.
Evolving in the telling.
Exactly. Evolving and taking on symbolic meaning. It's a fascinating concept of long-term cultural memory, rooted maybe in survival itself. Now, this next area, it takes us into some, well, less conventional territory.
Okay.
Veering into fringe theories and maybe paranormal interpretations of the dragon phenomenon, it definitely pushes the boundaries of what we usually consider in history or paleontology.
Right. So what are we talking about here?
This is where we explore if the flying aspect of many dragon myths, the descriptions of them existing in the sky or associated with celestial events, and some of the stranger, more abstract descriptions, could have alternative explanations. Beyond just big lizards or snakes, or even conventional megafauna from the past.
Alternative explanations like?
Well, some of the fringe theories presented in our research speculate whether dragons or similar powerful sky serpent figures in ancient myths could have been interpretations of ancient UFOs.
Ah, the ancient astronaut angle.
Or even extraterrestrial beings, yeah. The idea is that advanced technology or non-human entities encountered by early humans might have been interpreted through their limited understanding and mythological frameworks, resulting in descriptions of flying, powerful, sometimes terrifying creatures.
That Reddit research included titles that definitely leaned into this, didn't it?
It did, mentioning ideas like ancient aliens, suggesting dragons were perhaps products of alien bioengineering.
Wow.
Or the possibility that ancient ancestors were aware of reptilian-like gods that walked the earth. This perspective suggests powerful beings, maybe with a reptilian look, were seen as divine or demonic by ancient peoples, and these encounters got recorded as dragon myths.
Okay, that's definitely out there. What else?
We also see mentions of sky snakes or atmospheric beasts within cryptozoology discussions.
Atmospheric beasts.
Yeah, cryptids described as living high in the atmosphere, rarely seen but occasionally manifesting or being witnessed during unusual aerial phenomena. Now, these could be misidentified weather events, rare biological phenomena, or, in this fringe context, something entirely unexplained that exists up there.
And there was that Thunderbolts Project source, too?
Yep.
About plasma.
Right. That one was dense, focused on electrical plasma physics.
Yeah.
But it brings in the concept of plasma dragon.
Plasma dragons.
In the context of powerful electrical phenomena and storms, yeah. This theory proposes that certain mythological figures, including dragons, might be ancient interpretations of massive electrical discharges, maybe aurora-like events, or other intense atmospheric electrical phenomena.
Like ball lightning, but huge and snake-like.
Something like that, maybe? It links mythological figures to powerful, visible atmospheric electrical events, which would have been awe-inspiring and terrifying to ancient observers. It kind of echoes earlier theories, like Robert Blust's linguistic work suggesting dragons are related to pre-scientific ideas about rainfall, drought, rainbows.
Powerful, unpredictable, natural stuff.
Exactly. Interpreted anthropomorphically or as powerful entities.
Looking back at mythology with this lens, there are powerful sky-associated serpents, aren't there?
There really are. Herodotus wrote about those alleged flying serpents in Egypt. In the Bible, Leviathan, while mainly linked to the sea, is described as powerful, often fire-exhaling, and is battled by a sky god, Yahweh, suggesting a connection to powerful, chaotic forces spanning realms.
And the seraphim, weren't they linked?
Yes, the term seraphim, those celestial beings often associated with God's throne. It's listed as related to dragons in one source, and the term itself literally means fiery serpents.
Fiery serpents in the heavens.
Suggests ancient imagery of powerful, maybe flying serpentine beings up there.
And China?
Chinese mythology, as we discussed, has celestial dragons like Shenlong, the spirit dragon who controls weather and rainfall, explicitly tying the dragon to atmospheric events. Tianlong is the celestial dragon guarding the heavens.
Explicitly sky dwellers.
Yes. And the Mesoamerican feathered serpent deities like Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, combining serpent and bird features, explicitly link the earthbound reptile with the sky and the celestial realm.
So could some of these sky-dwelling dragons, fiery serpents, flying monsters, be ancient interpretations of powerful, maybe misunderstood aerial phenomena?
It's a possibility explored in these theories. Whether they were powerful storms, unusual cloud formations, meteor showers seen as fiery serpents descending, or maybe something more anomalous or unexplained witnessed in the skies.
It's speculative.
Highly speculative, yes. But it's a fascinating area of inquiry that tries to find a different kind of real basis for some of these stranger dragon myths. Okay, shifting gears completely now. Another powerful and perhaps even more fundamental angle is the psychological one.
Why they stick in our heads.
Exactly. Why do these creatures resonate so deeply across cultures and throughout history? Even today, long after any supposed real-world encounters or fossil finds have faded from conscious memory.
This brings us to the idea of the dragon as a psychological archetype, right? Linked to Carl Jung.
Precisely. That concept is touched upon in our research. It's a theory suggesting the dragon taps into something universal and deeply ingrained within the human mind.
What are archetypes again, exactly?
In Jungian psychology, they're universal, inborn patterns or images. Part of the collective unconscious, a layer of the mind Jung believed is shared by all humans, like an inherited psychic blueprint.
Okay.
These archetypes give rise to recurring symbols and motifs in mythology, dreams, art, literature across all cultures, regardless of separation. The dragon, in this sense, isn't just a creature. It's a potent symbol representing different archetypal meanings, depending on the context.
And dragon dreams. Our research mentioned those are common.
Quite common, apparently, and can be very meaningful. They might symbolize deep-seated, powerful forces within your own psyche, maybe untapped inner strength waiting to be acknowledged or unleashed.
Or challenges.
Exactly. Alternatively, they can represent formidable challenges or obstacles that the dreamer feels they must confront and overcome in their life journey. A major fear, difficult task, a personal struggle.
So fighting a dragon in a dream.
Often interpreted as directly confronting an internal fear or obstacle that's preventing personal growth. Sometimes, though, dreaming of dragons might simply tap into the boundless creativity and imagination of the mind itself, a connection to the wild, untamed aspect of the psyche.
And in stories. Narratives.
From a narrative perspective, the dragon frequently represents the ultimate challenge for the hero. As that University of Queensland research on monsters noted, confronting and fighting the monster is a key, often defining feature of the hero's tale across cultures.
The big boss battle.
Pretty much. It's the pivotal moment, the climax, where the protagonist must confront the most formidable force they've encountered. Whether that force is external in the world or a manifestation of internal conflict. The dragon is the gatekeeper.
To the treasure, the princess.
The transformation, or the safe return home, yeah.
The dragon can also embody fundamental human fears, right?
Yeah.
Almost universal ones.
Definitely. The fear of nature's raw, destructive power, like a volcano, a hurricane, a wildfire. The fear of the unknown and unpredictable elements of the world. The fear of the wild and untamed aspects of existence that lie outside human control.
The UQ research called monsters personifications of chaos.
Yes, forces that disrupt our perceived order, social norms, our safe reality, making them deeply unsettling figures that resonate because they tap into these basic anxieties.
There was another source, too, UIL, on archetypes.
Right. It explicitly linked the dragon as the dragon problem archetype to the seeker archetype.
Okay, explain that.
The dragon problem represents something that must be fled from, or, more powerfully, a significant challenge that must be overcome in the quest for self-discovery, knowledge, or identity.
The obstacle in the path.
Exactly. It's also connected to the magician archetype, where the dragon is something that needs to be transformed, not necessarily destroyed, but perhaps understood, integrated, or harnessed.
Ah, like inner demons.
Could be interpreted that way. Relating to personal growth and transformation, where confronting a powerful, fearful part of oneself leads to new power or wisdom.
The persistent appearance of the dragon throughout history in dreams, art, religious symbols. Still today in movies and books, it speaks volumes about its power as a symbol, doesn't it?
It really does. Why does it remain so potent? Perhaps because it taps into these deep-seated psychological patterns. Facing challenges, confronting fears, overcoming obstacles, undergoing transformation. It's like a universal shorthand to these profound experiences inherent in being human.
It gives us a way to visualize our struggles.
A powerful visual language, exactly,
Yeah.
for describing our internal battles and the external forces we perceive as threats or challenges. So whether the dragon is real or not in the physical world,
Its reality in our minds is undeniable.
its reality within the human psyche, its power as an archetype is undeniable. And that helps explain its enduring global presence.
Okay, so beyond mythology and psychology, what about alleged historical accounts? Claims of dragons actually existing or being encountered in documented history. Were there times people genuinely believed they were dealing with real dragons as animals?
Oh, absolutely. Our research touches on some fascinating examples where descriptions of serpentine monsters or large, unusual reptiles were recorded in texts considered historical accounts, often for centuries.
Like Apollonius of Tyana?
Right, we mentioned his biography earlier. It described 2 species of serpentine monsters in northern India and was treated as factual. One type allegedly had a jewel in its skull.
Which could link to fossils again? Crystals in cavities?
Possibly. And Herodotus, the father of history, writing about those winged serpents he claimed to have seen skeletons of in Egypt. While we might interpret that now through the lens of fossils like Spinosaurus.
For centuries, people took his word for it.
They did. It was seen as a serious historical observation.
And that skeleton found at Joppa, the one thought to be Perseus's monster.
That's another powerful example. Its 40-foot backbone was presented as tangible evidence of a real prehistoric beast, a physical thing found in the world that seemed to validate the ancient myth. This blurring of myth and perceived reality is incredibly significant.
Finding a fossil and fitting it to the story.
Precisely. Then, during the European Middle Ages, interest in dragons as potentially real, albeit rare and exotic, creatures really peaked among scholars and the public.
Those medieval bestiaries again.
Exactly. They were key here. While they often had allegorical interpretations linking animals to Christian morality, they described dragons alongside real animals like lions, elephants, wolves, treating them as part of the natural, if sometimes fantastical world.
And you said earlier they didn't always have wings in those.
Right. It's interesting how some early bestiaries depicted them initially without wings or legs, as giant serpents with immense power, especially in their tail, able to kill by constriction, even battle elephants.
Yeah.
Aligns with the older Greek dragon idea.
Before the winged image took over.
Exactly. The evolution of the dragon's depiction in bestiaries shows a shift in how the concept was visualized and integrated into the perceived natural world over time.
Did these bestiaries directly influence things like church carvings, gargoyles?
Well, the direct influence of those often rare, eliminated bestiaries on widespread imagery is debated in our research. But depictions of fantastic, often dragon-like creatures, gargoyles, frequently resemble dragons, appeared concurrently with or even predated the first bestiaries, suggesting a broader cultural fascination and belief that such monsters existed somewhere out there.
In the unexplored corners of the world.
Yeah. And we have more specific later accounts, too, often treated as sensational news back then.
Like what?
John Trundle's 1614 pamphlet, The True and Wonderful Relation of a Horrible Serpent.
Catchy title.
Isn't it? It detailed a supposed dragon terrorizing the countryside near Horsham in Sussex, England. Described its size, appearance, actions. Now, clearly sensationalized for the popular press of the era. But the fact that such a story could be published and find an audience reflects a public belief in the possibility of such creatures still existing in the wild.
People were willing to believe it.
Seems so. Then there's the famous Welsh legend from Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century Historia Regum Britannia.
The red and white dragons?
That's the one. The battle between the red and white dragons discovered beneath Dinas Emrys near Snowdon. This wasn't just a whimsical tale. It was interpreted allegorically.
As the Welsh versus the English.
Right. The red dragon representing the native Welsh, it's now a national symbol, and the white dragon representing the invading Saxons or English. This powerful legend remained popular for centuries, influencing national identity, historical narratives, treating the dragons as ancient symbolic forces tied to the land itself.
So they became part of national identity.
Deeply ingrained. And even prominent historical figures debated the reality of dragons. Athanasius Kircher.
Who was he?
A renowned 17th century German Jesuit scholar and polymath, known for wide-ranging scientific and historical investigations. He genuinely believed in the existence of dragons.
A respected scholar believed.
Yes. He cited various historical accounts, religious sources, supposed eyewitness reports as evidence in his works, tried to fit them into the known natural world. He took these claims seriously within the scientific understanding of his time.
But not everyone agreed.
No. In contrast, you have Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist who established our modern system of taxonomy in the 18th century.
Father of modern biology.
Right. He was highly skeptical, much more rigorous about empirical evidence. He famously dismissed mythological dragons, stating that, as far as science was concerned, no such creature existed, except for the small, gliding lizard genus Dracovolans.
The little flying dragon lizard.
Yeah, so he basically said those are the only dragons we know.
So, while many accounts are clearly myth or interpretation, there were periods and people who genuinely considered dragons might be real animals.
Yes. Real, albeit rare, exotic, or elusive animals. This belief was often based on secondhand reports, older texts treated as fact, or misinterpreting natural phenomena or remains. It really highlights how fluid the line between myth and perceived natural history could be in the past. So after all that, where does this leave us? We've journeyed from the bizarre global phenomenon of dragon myths, explored the distinct differences between East and West, delved into theories about fossil discoveries, sparking ideas of giant reptiles.
Considered memories of terrifying megafauna encounters passed down generations.
Looked at the profound psychological resonance of the dragon as an archetype.
And examine alleged historical claims and the debates around them.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. And weighing all this evidence from our research, it seems highly unlikely that the fire-breathing, gold-hoarding, winged beasts of medieval European legend,
or even the wise, celestial Chinese dragons of myth,
roamed the earth exactly as described in the folklore, interacting with knights and emperors. The physics alone of a flying, fire-breathing reptile the size of a bus are, let's just say, challenging.
Understatement, yeah. However, that fossil evidence presented by Adrian Nair is incredibly compelling, isn't it?
It really
It
is.
seems very plausible, based on our research, that ancient discoveries of dinosaur bones, giant extinct crocodile skeletons, other large prehistoric animal remains, or even just recognizing the sheer scale of past life through fossils, sparked the initial ideas. Ideas of enormous, fearsome reptiles, far larger and stranger than any living ones.
And these discoveries could have fed into existing serpent myths, amplifying them.
Exactly, amplifying them into truly monstrous proportions.
And the idea that these myths could also stem, at least partly, from deep-seated human fears of powerful predators.
Or even distorted oral memories of terrifying encounters with now extinct megafauna from thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years ago.
Like colossal snakes, big cats, giant birds.
Yeah, that adds another compelling layer to the possible origins, particularly in cultures where such animals were very real, life-threatening dangers.
And we absolutely cannot ignore the symbolic power.
No way. The dragon's role as a psychological archetype for challenges, fear, transformation, it resonates universally. Regardless of whether a physical dragon ever existed, exactly as described,
It's a primal, potent symbol.
woven into the human psyche, giving the dragon enduring power in stories, dreams, cultural narratives, even in our modern world that understands paleontology and psychology.
Then there are the more speculative fringe ideas.
Right. The possibility that some myths could be ancient interpretations of powerful atmosphere phenomena, lightning, weird celestial events.
Or the truly fringe notions of ancient alien interactions or cryptids waiting to be discovered.
While less supported by conventional evidence, they highlight that human drive to find extraordinary explanations for extraordinary phenomena, don't they?
They do. Ultimately, our research presents multiple, sometimes overlapping possibilities for the origin and persistence of the dragon myth across the globe.
It seems highly unlikely there's one single, simple answer that explains every dragon myth in every culture.
No silver bullet.
Probably not. Instead, it's likely a complex confluence of factors, fossil discoveries sparking imagination,
Encounters with real animals, living and extinct, instilling fear and wonder.
shared human psychology, the archetypal need to personify fears, challenges, forces of nature,
Symbolic representation of those natural forces.
and the fascinating, messy ways stories evolve, travel, and merge across cultures over vast stretches of time.
The enduring allure of the dragon in our stories and imagination, though, it's undeniable.
Totally. They capture something fundamental about power, fear, the unknown, whether it's the hero facing the terrifying beast to claim a prize,
Or the wise celestial being bringing rain and fortune.
or the monstrous representation of chaos. The dragon holds a mirror to some of our deepest anxieties and highest aspirations.
So perhaps the most intriguing question remains. The one that keeps fueling fascination.
Were dragons purely a product of the human imagination, shaped by common fears, chance discoveries of ancient bones, the need for powerful symbols?
Or the echoes of something real, something terrifying, something perhaps even forgotten by conventional history. Maybe even something still hiding, just beyond the known.
That's it for this journey beyond the known. If the unknown calls to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. There's so much more waiting to be discovered.